Well, hello friends, I'm David Vose. I hope you're all having a great day. It is a beautiful day in Texas. I'm having a great day, and it's cooled off a little bit, but it's still hot, but not bad. And it is a little cloudy out. It's real nice. I'm going to go take a walk after I finish this video. Hopefully I'll be able to take a walk before it gets dark, because I really enjoy my walks in the moonlight. I love these summer nights. Well, friends, I've got some very important information for you. We've just finished 3 videos in a series about the Sumerian tablets and so forth, and we've done quite a few videos on health and stuff, and this is going to kind of be related to both of those subjects, because I want to go back into history, because we've already determined that the gods have been on the earth, and they've lived here, and they lived for a long time. We've talked about how there were certain foods that the gods ate that evidently gave them eternal life. So I want to go into some of that, some of the information that we have that we know, and see if we can find out what it was that the gods actually ate. Is there any truth to this elixir of life? Even there in the Garden of Eden, we know that there was a tree that if you ate from the tree, you could live forever. Now we know that it may not be absolutely literal, because Jesus came and offered us the tree of life, but you know, he didn't actually take a tree and say, here, eat this fruit. So what is the tree of life? Could there literally be a diet that could make one live longer? There are a lot of legends around the world, not just in Samaria or Babylon or Israel or Egypt, but everywhere around the world, in China and India especially. There's a lot of information that we need to wade through, because these ancient gods ate and drank just like humans to stay alive. I mean, we covered the story of Abraham meeting the angels along the way to Sodom and Gomorrah, and if you'll remember, when Abraham saw the angels coming, then they made a big meal and they sat down and they ate and they drank. As we talked about in earlier videos, one thing that was forbidden to humans in the Bible was the fatty pieces of the slaughter, which our Bibles translate sacrifice. They would slaughter the animals, and the thing that was forbidden was the blood and the fatty pieces around the heart and the liver and the kidneys. Those were called the fatty pieces, all the way from the time of Abel's offering, which was the fatty pieces, all the way into Exodus and Deuteronomy and Numbers and Leviticus, where it explains what they were to do with their offerings on a barbecue pit, basically, and that certain parts of the sacrifice was not to be eaten by humans. The Israelites were forbidden by the god Yahweh, to eat the fatty pieces and the fat around that and the blood. That was put on the altar. It was offered. So it wasn't just burnt up into smoke. It was cooked. And then, as we showed in one of the videos that we recently did, the scripture actually says that Jehovah would eat the sacrifice. And so what he was eating was these special parts and the blood. Leviticus 21:6. They shall be holy to their God, and not profane the name of their God, for they present the offerings which is cooked to the Lord, the food of their God, so they shall be holy. So everybody knows that the Bible is fixated with shepherding sheep. I mean, that seems to be the main thing they do. The land that they were to go to was a land of milk and honey. But it was also a land of cattle and sheep. It was also a land of wine and date wine and other beers and different things that they drank. From the very beginning in the Garden of Eden, it was Jehovah that it went out and slaughtered a cow and clothed them. And we saw in another video what that word means, that word kippur, or atonement. It means to cover. And so it never really was a religious thing. The fact is that human beings were not allowed by the gods to have immortality. But in order to work and become slaves, they were given certain parts of the animal to eat, while other parts of the animal was reserved for the gods. And if you don't believe that the gods literally ate the animals, as it says here in the Sumerian tablets, look in your own Bible. The God Jehovah, as we have said, is not the Almighty Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Because, you see, our Father in heaven is spirit, and He doesn't eat animals, and He doesn't do anything like that. I know a lot of Christians would not believe it if I told them that Jehovah in the Bible ate the sacrifices, literally partook of the bloody sacrifices, and that when He said, I want you to reserve the kidneys and the fatty pieces for me and the blood, and you are not allowed to eat the fat or the blood, but that is for me. I bet you, even if I read you a verse in the Bible, you wouldn't believe that it was true. So I'm going to find all of the verses in the Bible so that I can make sure and establish this point, that the gods, number one, were mortal, that the gods ate and drank with humanity. We have seen literally where Abraham went and slaughtered some of his herd to feed to Jehovah. As he was going down the trail, there were 3 angels, and one of the angels was Jehovah. And Abraham fed him a meal. And this has happened quite a few times. Lot was hospitable to the angels and fed them. And so, let me read some verses in the Bible so we can make this point very clear. Because what I want to establish is, what did the gods give mankind? Why did they give it to us? And what did the gods themselves eat? Because the Bible says that the gods could live forever because of the food that they ate. And there were certain foods that they forbade humans because they were not allowed to live forever, but they were to be slaves. Alright, so I'm going to read quite a few verses. Starting off with Exodus 29, verse 23, it says, And 1 cake of bread, and 1 cake of bread mixed with oil, and 1 wafer from the basket of unleavened bread, which is set before the Lord. Alright. So they would set the offering before the Lord. But did the Lord eat the offering, or what did He do with it? It says He smelled the savor, so He had a nose, He could smell it. What else did He do? Well, Exodus 40, verse 23. He set the arrangement of bread in order on it before the Lord. Leviticus 3, verse 11. Then the priest shall offer it up and cook it on the altar as food, which is an offering to the Lord. Leviticus 21:6. They shall be holy to their God, and not profane the name of their God, for they present the offerings which is cooked to the Lord, the food of their God, so they shall be holy. What is the Bible trying to say when it says that this God ate the sacrifices? It can't be symbolic. We've already proven in several videos that this God, Jehovah, is the Enki, Ea, of the Sumerian tablets. And we've seen in their writings very clearly that they introduced agriculture. With Cain and Abel, they introduced agriculture and the herding of sheep and the eating of meat. And as we've seen in Genesis, it was Jehovah that when Abel offered up his lamb, it says that he was very pleased with the fatty pieces. And now we know why, because it was the fatty pieces, as we're going to see in these verses, that was given to God along with the blood. And that fatty part and the blood was forbidden for the Israelites. Leviticus 21:8. You shall consecrate him, therefore, for he offers the food of your God. He shall be holy to you, for I, the Lord, who sanctifies you, am holy. Leviticus 21:17. Speak to Aaron, saying, No man of your offspring throughout their generation who has a defect shall approach to offer the food of his God. Leviticus 21:12. No man among the descendants of Aaron the priest who has a defect is to come near to offer the Lord's offerings by fire. Since he has a defect, he shall not come near to the offering of the food of his God. Leviticus 22:25. Nor shall you accept any such from the hand of a foreigner for offering as the food of your God, for their corruption is in them. They have a defect. Leviticus 23:18. Along with the bread you shall present 7 one-year-old male lambs without defect, and a bull of the herd, and 2 rams, and they are to be cooked as an offering to the Lord. Their grain offering and their drink offerings, an offering upon the fire, and it will be a soothing aroma to the Lord. 24:7. You shall put pure frankincense on each row, that it may be a memorial portion for the bread, even an offering in the fire to the Lord. Numbers 28:2. Command the sons of Israel, say unto them, you shall be careful to present my offerings, my food for my offerings on the fire. A soothing aroma it will be to me at the appointed time. Numbers 28:24. After this manner you shall present the daily for 7 days, the food of the offering in the fire, of a soothing aroma to the Lord. It shall be presented with the drink offering, in addition to the continual burnt offering. See, the drink offering was wine. So this God drank wine and he ate the fatty pieces. Ezekiel 16 verse 19. Also my bread which I gave you, fine flour, oil, and honey, which I fed you, there's that honey, you would offer before these pagan deities for a soothing aroma. So it happened, declared the Lord. Ezekiel 44:7. When you brought in foreigners, uncircumcised in heart and uncircumcised in flesh, to be in my sanctuary, to profane it, even my house, when you offered my food, the fat and the blood, for they made my covenant void. This is addition to all your abominations. Said he was really upset because they ate the fat and the blood, because that was the part that was only supposed to be for God. Leviticus 7:25 says, for whosoever eateth the fat of the beast, of which men offer, made by fire to the Lord, even the soul that eateth it shall be cut off from his people. And verse 26, moreover ye shall eat no manner of blood, whether it be of fowl or beast or of any dwellings. Whosoever shall it be that eateth any manner of blood, even that soul shall be cut off from the people. So you see, the blood was offered upon the altar to God as well as the fat, and that usually means the fatty pieces. I mean, even a piece of meat might have fat on it, but it was talking about the fatty pieces around the kidneys and the appendages. There's places in the Bible where it spells it out exactly what he means by not eating the fat or the blood, because that was something offered to God. Here's an example of that in Leviticus chapter 3, starting with verse 9, I think all the way down through 17, it says, he shall offer of the sacrifice of the peace offering, an offering made by fire, to cook it unto the Lord, the fat thereof, and the whole rump, and the fat that covereth the inwards, and all the fat that is upon the inwards, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is on them, which is by the flanks, the caul above the liver with the kidneys, it shall take that away, and the priest shall cook that upon the altar. It is the food made in the fire unto the Lord. In verse 12, then if the offering is a goat, then he shall offer it before the Lord. He shall lay his hand upon the head, he shall kill it before the tabernacle of the congregation, and the sons of Aaron shall pour the blood on the altar, the fat that covereth the inwards, and all the fat that is upon the inward, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, which is by the flanks, and the caul above the liver with the kidneys, he shall take it away, and the priest shall cook that on the altar. It is the food that is made in the fire for a sweet savor. All the fat is the Lord's, that is Yahweh there, Iyah. It shall be a perpetual law for all of your generations throughout all of your dwellings, that ye eat neither fat nor blood. And so Ezekiel 16:19 says, also my bread which I gave you, fine flour, oil, and honey, with which I fed you. See, the gods fed mankind because before the gods arrived on the planet and began to, make religion and make slavery and tell humans what to do and tell them to go make pyramids for them and, begin to teach them all of this stuff and make them the slaves. So basically, so they could mine gold. Here's another thing that the humans did, other than just mine their gold so they could take it back to Nibiru. The other thing was they were to feed their gods and take care of them like little servants. They had house servants and cook servants and, people that tilled the fields. This is what Cain and Abel were created for. One was to till the fields. He probably had people under him. So there was going to be a whole group of people that would do that. And that particular line, Enki already had workers that he was using to mine. And he gave birth to Cain by having sex with Titi, one of his Adamites he would use as a royal blood, so that he would be closer connected, and that they would literally feel they had some kind of connection to the gods, and they would be more loyal. And so he would choose certain humans to do certain jobs. Some of the humans that were more closely related to the gods got special positions, and some of them were cooks and some of them were priests. And that's basically what a priest was. He took care of God. He fed God. And he told the people what they were allowed to eat and what they couldn't eat. They had to give them enough food so that they could work and be slaves, but they were never allowed to eat certain parts of the animal that would give them better health and let them live much longer. Ezekiel 44:7 says, when you brought in foreigners, uncircumcised in heart and uncircumcised in flesh, to be in my sanctuary, to profane it, even my house, when you offered my food, the fat and the blood, that's my food. But you offered it to them, and you defiled it. Hosea chapter 9, verse 4. They will not pour out drink offerings of wine to the Lord. Oh, he liked wine too. Their sacrifices will not please him. Their bread will be mourner's bread. All who eat of it will be defiled, for their bread will be for themselves alone, and it will not be also for the Lord. So he's saying, look, you can eat it by yourself. I'm not having any of that. I'm angry with you. Malachi 1 verse 7. You are presenting defiled food upon mine altar. Did you know that's what an altar was for? It's not a religious thing. Today we've got this whole ceremonial thing we call religion. Somehow it's like a religion. What is religion? What was the purpose of religion? Obedience? Well, okay, yes. We were to obey the gods. We had to feed the gods. Special food, right? But we weren't allowed to eat that food. See? I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, and we were told you could never touch blood ever. Well, those white Caucasian Germans up there been eating blood for a long time. It's called blood sausage. It was a part of their diet. And they were very tall and strong and healthy. But you say, how have we defiled you? In that you say, the table of the Lord is to be despised. A table? The table of the Lord? Well, what do you do with a table? You eat. See, these aren't... We have this idea that sacrifices were some sort of, we just offer them up and then they go up in smoke and God just sort of symbolically smells it, and he symbolically eats it. But either way, that's kind of ridiculous. But remember, with this in mind, what do you think this God Jehovah meant when he said, I want you to sacrifice or slaughter? Remember, the word sacrifice means to slaughter. Altar means a barbecue pit. And atonement means to cover yourself with the hide. So you got food and you got clothes and even shelter. You could use it to make tents from the animal. It was your whole life. So if that's what sacrifices or slaughterings were, what did God mean when he told Abraham, I want you to slaughter your son and put him on the altar? Was God going to eat Isaac? Well, human sacrifice is known in ancient times. And yes, they did do that. And I can show you many verses where this God Jehovah says, the firstborn of Israel is mine, and you shall put it upon the altar, is all mine. But if you want to let your son live, you can substitute a lamb. That's in the Bible in Exodus. It certainly is. Here's something from an Acadian writing. It says, the Anunnaki, the great gods, were sitting in thirst and hunger. Their lips were feverishly athirst. They were suffering cramp from hunger. The gods sniffed the smell. They smelled the odor like Jehovah used to do. That's what that means. This is a parallel verse in the ancient scriptures. When the gods smelled the odor of the sacrifices, this is what it means. They were hungry. They were thirsty. And they gathered like flies over the offering. The gods gathered like flies. And after they had eaten the offering, that's in one of the Akkadian tablets that I'm reading you. That's in this Atrahasis writings. Here's a Hittite source. It says, The mountains dried up, the trees dried up, so that buds do not come forth. The pastures dried up, the springs dried up. Famine appeared in the land. Humans and gods perish from hunger. Gods can perish from hunger? The great sun god prepared a feast and invited 1,000 gods. They ate, but were not satiated. They drank, but they were not satisfied. Here's another Hittite manuscript establishing a new temple for the goddess of the night. It says, they offer the ritual of blood with a kid. Afterward, they offer the ritual of praise with a lamb. Afterward, the lamb is burned for the ambasi ritual. Afterward, with the help of the table man, they bring for the deity all the stew, one warm bread of half sati, one loaf made of gug, and one sweet bread of one handful, one jug of beer, one pitcher of wine, and they gave this to the deity to eat. Really? Yeah, and we just read it in the Bible too, so I guess it's pretty much established now. Any of you who are watching this who do not believe that Jehovah ate the sacrifices, then you're just not reading, you're just not listening to what I'm showing you. And so if Jehovah ate the sacrifices, then he was a physical, carnal person from another planet. He was not our Father in heaven. Case closed, period, done. I'm sorry, but I want the truth. We have to know the truth. We can no longer hang on to our imaginations and our doctrines of men. We've got to know the truth, friends. Here is Psalms chapter 50, 7 through 15. Hear, O my people, and I will speak, O Israel. I will testify against you. I am God, your God. Not for your sacrifices do I rebuke you. Your burnt offerings are continually before me. I will not accept a bull from your house or goats from your folds. For every wild animal of the forest is mine. The cattle on 1,000 hills. I know all the birds, and all that moves in the field is mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you. For the world and all that is in it is mine. Do I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats? All right, notice here, drink the blood of goats. Okay, so these sacrifices, this is what they do. They eat the flesh of bulls and drink the blood of goats. Well, here in Psalms, the true El Elyon. Remember, half of the book of Psalms is about El Elyon, which is the Most High, who ruled over the gods. Some of Psalms is written, there are two manuscripts. There's the Yahwist priests and the Elohist priests. And we've talked about that in some other videos. But some of the book of Psalms, as is some of the book of Daniel and other parts of the Bible, were written by the Elohists, which were written by the Israelites and not the Jews. Remember, they split apart into two different nations. And so in this place, we're talking about the God Elohim and our Father in heaven who doesn't eat sacrifices. And he's saying, look, whatever you're doing down there to your gods, they're not gods. And now if you're trying to offer me sacrifices, I don't like it. I don't want sacrifices. I can't eat sacrifices. But we do learn what Jehovah did when he got the sacrifices. When they would sacrifice to Jehovah, it says he would eat the flesh of the bulls and he would drink the blood of the goats. It's right there in Psalms 50, 7 through 15, friends. Look at Deuteronomy 32, 36 through 38. It says, for the Lord will vindicate his people, and he will have compassion on his servants. When he sees that their strength is gone, and there is none remaining, bond or free, and he will say, where are their gods, the rock in which they sought refuge? Who ate the fat of their sacrifices, and drank the wine of their drink offerings? Let them rise up and help you. Let them be your hiding place. See, this is the Most High speaking, and he's saying these gods who used to eat your fat on the altar, and they used to drink your wine that you offered them, he says, let them go and help you. They're not gods at all. They can't help you. You've been deceived, friends. And friends, if you're a Christian and you didn't know this information, then you also have been deceived. And that is something we've got to rectify, because our Lord Jesus came to give us the light so that we would not be deceived any longer. We need the truth, because the truth will set us free. And we need to serve the true and living God and not the God Jehovah. And we need to understand that the laws of that God are slander against us, and they are an accusation that does not belong upon our heart. He defiles us, and you can't believe in that. And so you must not believe in that God, but you must turn to the true and living God of the New Testament and the Father of the Lord Jesus, your Father and my Father, your God and my God. Now, one of the reasons that I brought all of this up today is because what I want you to understand is that while there are some parts of this that I'm not going to reveal in this video, and I may reveal it at another time, there's definitely certain foods that can give people a lot longer life than what we've been allowed. This God Jehovah did not allow us certain foods. And according to the scriptures, that was the food that the gods ate that gave them such long life. And this might be why some of the patriarchs lived such long lives, because they were a little closer in blood lineage to the gods, and they were allowed a little bit better food. But the peasants and those that were out working in the field, they were not allowed this type of food, and they died very young. It's a proven fact that when we started feeding milk, when the advent of cereal and milk came along, people started getting taller and healthier. I understand that a lot of the world, maybe 2/3 of the world, is lactose intolerant. But that should not stop you from understanding that the ingredients in milk is a balanced protein. It's a balanced food. It has all the nutrition that you need. And meat and liver and salmon has the nutrition that you need. The liver and the fatty pieces that the gods ate, they ate it because they knew what was good for them, and it made them live a long time. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up, because when the God came from Nibiru, they lived a long life, and they forbid human beings from knowing this information. Look around today and you'll see that we're not ruling our country. Somebody's ruling over us. The same gods that were ruling then are still ruling, and they're deceiving us even today. And they're trying to take away our diet so that we can't live. Do you know that a cow can give you more nutrition per acre by raising a couple of cows in your land? You can get more nutrition from the milk, the hide, and the meat, the chickens and the eggs, and that kind of thing. Far more nutrition, live much longer and healthier than an acre of corn. And for some reason, they're lying to us, and they're trying to get everybody to start eating vegetables, and they don't want us to eat meat no more. You know, we got this big kick of, well, everybody's got to be a vegetarian. And the truth is that you can't live a long, healthy life that way. And that's not what the gods ate. That's not what the Bible teaches. It's crazy that today we've been taught that somehow milk is bad and you shouldn't eat it. But yet you've got people eating candy and chemicals and all kinds of terrible things. But milk and eggs, there are so many people that just can't eat it at all. And the reason why is because they've never been trained. They've been told, don't eat eggs and don't eat milk. They've been told, don't eat eggs. Ew. Don't drink milk. Oh, that's nasty. That comes out of a cow's udder. Well, dairy products are a great way to sustain your body. One of the best ways. Even the Bible says that eggs are a perfect food, a gift from our Father in heaven. Jesus Christ says that in the book of Matthew. And so dairy and cow meat can make many more times the food per square acre than crops from agriculture can. This is a fact. And because of that, the Indo-European peoples, the white Caucasian peoples, spread rapidly in northern Europe, even in areas where there was so much snow you couldn't even do the agriculture. And the food was so nutritious that it made them very huge, almost like giants. Many of the peoples that lived in countries where they didn't eat meat or milk, they were very short people. Like if you go down to Central America, or some people in China, they're very small because they didn't have a lot of milk and there weren't a lot of cows. And so when the Europeans drank a lot of milk, they got very tall and they're very strong. It's even written that Julius Caesar said that the Celts and the Germans were so large because they ate meat and they drank milk. All of the conquering tribes, some of them called barbarians, the Aryans, Arabs, the Mongols, were all known for riding around on horses and camels. And then the Scythians would even drink the milk of their horses, so they got the nickname mare milkers. And so their lifestyle and the habits that they had, where they would go like nomads, gave them so much strength because of the foods that they could eat, and they could take it with them. They didn't have to grow it in the field and stay there, but they could take it with them. They could travel great distances to invade other nations, and they never ran out of food because they just took it with them. So if the Chinese back in those days were to launch an invasion up there into Europe, they could never get anywhere because they'd have to go home as soon as the rice was, they brought food with them, and as soon as it ran out, they had to go home because that's all they ate. But these warrior Caucasians, Indo-Europeans that ate meat and drank milk, they had the food right there. It made them strong and gave them energy, and it made them live much longer. They carried it with them right on their own horse, and some of them even milked the horse that they were on. So friends, the point that I'm trying to make is that mankind has eaten different diets. There were hunter-gatherers, there was Cro-Magnon man, or whatever else you want to believe about this world. But domesticated animals and stuff is a relatively new thing, and it's basically come to the world with the advent of the gods. And the gods knew what they were doing because they've been evolving on their planet for long, long thousands and hundreds of thousands of years. And when they came here, they gave as a gift to man a diet that was milk and a type of beer, which I'm not going to go into in this video, but maybe one day I'll cover that kind of beer that they used to make because they made it out of honey. And so that was kind of an elixir of life that they took with them. And wine was very important. So they liked their wine, they liked their beer, they liked their milk, their yogurts, their cheeses, and they loved their meat. What I want to find out is there any significance to these particular pieces of the animal and giving one long life, and just what is the reason that this God Jehovah forbade us to eat those particular pieces? So the ancient gods, the Sumerians, the Babylonians, they always had cattle and sheep and milk and goats and cheese and honey. There's a big thing in there about beer and wine and honey, and those are very important things, and those are basically some of the foods that we're going to be discussing. The Sumerians taught that the kings of summer were nourished by Ninhartsag's milk. This was the Lady of Heaven, and she is referred to, one of her names is Mami, M-A-M-I, Mami, which means mother. She is mother. She is the great goddess. She was the great fertility goddess, and she was associated with the cow. And it says that the gods and the kings of summer grew strong with Mami's milk. And so the gods of Egypt, like the Sumerians, they drank milk, but they called their mother goddess Hathor, and she was also a cow. She was usually depicted as a white cow carrying a cup of her own milk. As you know, the Hindus worship cows. And in their mythology, the gods would churn the ocean of milk, which is a symbol of the Milky Way, and they came from the Milky Way. And so the swirling stars they called milk. And that's why we, to this day, call it the Milky Way. And they said the Milky Way surrounds the earth. And so for 1,000 years, they would churn the Milky Way until it became butter. And this was the food of the gods. They called the milk Amrita. And the gods ate it, and it gave them immortality. It was forbidden to humans. Just like in the Bible, the blood of the animal was forbidden to humans, and the fat. There were several things that the gods forbade humans to eat. So after they would churn the milk, they would save the best part of it, which they called Amrita, and it was the nectar of the gods. They did not allow humans to eat it. It is basically a milk or a yogurt butter, and they would add honey in the pot. It sounds a little bit like the land of milk and honey. There is a Hindu religious dish that's called Panchamarita, and it has that marita in there. And it's made from milk, yogurt, and butter and honey as well. They would offer that up to the gods on the great feast days in India. And as you know, the milk cow is revered in India, and it's their mother goddess because it provides so much nourishment to the people in India. The Greeks did the same thing. They had the nectar of ambrosia, and they would stay forever young. In classical writings, the Greek nectar that they ate, it always had something to do with honey, but there's a little bit of controversy as to whether it was some say it was a bread and some say it was a drink. Some say it was a wine, and others say it was blood. Well, the ambrosia that the Greeks used was some kind of milk or cream, at least at times. In the Hindu tradition, Amrita is always associated with milk. Remember the story of Hercules. He was given the nectar or the ambrosia when he went to Mount Olympus. And there was a story of a mortal human who was allowed to drink this. And he then tried to give it to other mortals, but the gods punished him because it was forbidden for humans. It was also said that the gods who drank the ambrosia did not have the same blood that we humans have. It was said that their blood would change and they would have an ichor or an ichor flowing through their veins. According to the legends, ichor was dangerous, it was toxic for humans. It was a different color than regular blood. We have a tradition today that the royals have a blue blood. They call them the blue bloods. And the royals were white gods or tall Europeans who had different blood. And it was very difficult for them to mate with other races. Sometimes the children would die because they said their blood was toxic. The Chinese also have this thing called Amrita, which they say is also a drink that gives immortality. And they said it was made from the cream of the Milky Way. The Iranians have a myth, or the Persians, that the cup of Jamshid contains the sacred elixir of immortality. If you drank it, you could have the powers of divination. We have Irish mythology with the cauldron of rebirth, which brings the dead back to life. And in Britain we talk about King Arthur, who had the Holy Grail, which means the holy blood, which was a holy cup that if you drank out of it, it's supposed to have had the blood of Jesus Christ, and you'd live forever. So, in the country of Egypt and Greece and Sumer and in India, they always had one of two foods that the gods ate. And one was always ambrosia or amrita. One of the reasons for this is because the white race lived in the north and they always had cattle. The Caucasian race has a gene that allows them to drink milk after they become adults. 90% of Africans and Asians are lactose intolerant and they cannot drink milk. So this is basically something that is a racial thing. The white races were herdsmen and cattlemen, and they ate meat and they drank milk. And so in ancient days they were considered gods, and the milk was such a great nutritional food that it made them very tall. It's true that even to this day, cultures that start drinking milk, they end up getting taller. The advent of cereal and milk has allowed the Central Americans to grow taller than they used to grow. Another thing they used to do was they used to add a drug called soma into the milk. Soma is, today, we call it ephedra, and that is something that is illegal to buy over the counter. It's an actual drug. But the Caucasian race has known this for thousands of years. They used to use it and put it in their milk. It was a stimulant, and they used it in religious rituals. The Bharatas of the Vedas used to literally worship this drug, soma, and they believed that the soma drink would make them live for a very, very long time. It's a fact that Caucasians generally do live. When they stick to the diet with the meat and the milk, they generally do live a lot longer, and basically a little longer than some of the other races. It's been recently, there's been studies that have shown that certain diseases are prone to races that don't drink a lot of milk and eat meat. The nectar of the gods is usually considered something like honey. And so honey and the honey bee has been a sacred animal. Even the Mormons today have the honeybee as a symbol. And the Masons use the honeybee as a symbol, because the bees gather the nectar from the flowers. And so the white Caucasian races would domesticate the bees and they would eat the honey. This is just like in the Bible, the land of milk and honey. It was something that the Indo-European peoples ate all the time. Milk and honey. These were two things that they always ate, and it supposedly gave them immortality or a long life. But they didn't just eat regular honey all the time. Sometimes they would actually ferment the honey with water, and they would add malt to make a mead. If you add more malt, which is basically, grains, you can make a bread with it. And so they would call it mead or honey wine. And that is really the grandfather of all beers. Egypt was known for beer, and the Middle East has always been known for their beer. The Germans are known for their beer. But originally they would make the beer much differently than we make it today, and they would drink it in order to have a long life. It was part of their sacred meals. In many languages, mead means honey. Sometimes it was considered like liquid gold, and it was very, very expensive and very, very important to their diet. But it was considered the nectar of the gods by many of the Indo-European white Caucasian nations. In some of the myths of the Hebrews and Persians and the Irish and the British and the Chinese, we always see that the food that the gods ate and drank was an alcoholic drink. Even the Jews revered the wine, and they made offerings to God with the wine. So one of the things that the god Jehovah would eat, along with the fatty pieces of the animal and the blood, was also the wine. Jesus himself said, "You must drink my blood and eat my flesh." It was always something that was very religious. It was something that gave them long life. It was a part of their culture and a part of their festivities every year. So now, let me read you this again from the Sumerian tablets. The Anunnaki gods of the holy mountain partook of the bounty of cattle and grain, and they were not satisfied. The Anunnaki gods of the holy mountain partook of the sweet milk of their holy cattle, but they were not satisfied. For their own well-being in the holy cattle, they gave them to mankind as sustenance. One of the reasons, though, that the Indo-Europeans drank milk and honey so much and meat is because that was their way of life. The Caucasian nations, the Indo-Europeans, they all partook of milk, alcohol, and blood. And a lot of the modern religious traditions, even Christian traditions, such as the communion or the mass, still to this day include something like wine or the blood of the sacrifice. So the religious holy drink always included something either like blood, milk, and alcohol. The Baharatas of India drank a cup of milk, which they called ghee, which is clarified butter basically. And they would do this before they would get married to seal the marriage vows. There are certain fraternities today that keep these customs and practice this to this very day. So the Indo-European individuals, the white races, they had a different diet than ordinary humans did, because they made dairy basically a staple food and meat. And this was the food of the gods, because for many thousands of years the white races were considered the gods. And of course, individuals from Samaria that came to the world and declared themselves gods really were the white race. And they began to have relations with the daughters of men. This is where the Rh negative blood factor comes in. And most of the Rh negative blood comes from Europeans or the Indo-European nations. And today, about 2/3 of the world's population cannot even drink milk or partake of any milk product. They can drink it when they're children, but after they're an adult, their body stops producing lactate, and they're not able to digest milk. The lactose is a carbohydrate that's in the milk. It's a sugar, just like fructose, glucose. Well, lactose is a type of sugar. It's a carbohydrate that's in the milk. So this is why you've got a lot of people on the internet saying, oh, you should never drink milk, it's only for children. Well, that is true with about 2/3 of the population of the earth, and many people are lactose intolerant. It is not true, however, for certain individuals of the Indo-European white race. The highest percentage of people that can tolerate milk live in Northern Europe. There are a few individuals in Africa that somehow have evolved this ability either separately or they had in the distant past some kind of mixing of races or because of certain inbreeding between certain Africans that were taken into Europe and used as slaves. There's a small number of them that also have the Rh negative factor. Because the Indo-Europeans got so much from the cow, the milk and the meat and the blood, and also the bee and its honey, but especially the cow was basically revered as an object of worship. It was venerated. As most of you know, in India today, the cow is still revered and worshipped. People living in the northern climates would probably have starved if they didn't have their cattle, and especially the milk that gave them the nutrition to live the long, cold winters. According to the Sumerian tablets, the Anunnaki gave humankind, they bestowed upon them a great gift when they gave them cattle and grain. We talked about that in another video where Cain and Abel, one was a shepherd of sheep, one was a tiller of the field. These were two gifts from the gods. So the cow was considered the mother goddess because she produced the milk. And they also worshipped the bull, not just the mother cow, but the bull, because they would eat the meat as well. Interestingly, even to this day here in America, we say, holy cow! And this goes back to the fact that in the Indo-European peoples, the white Caucasian races, the cow has always been a very sacred animal. The mythology of the Norse was the cow goddess Adambla. She was the nurturing mother of humanity. It is said that she nurtured Ymir, the first primeval being, with her divine milk. The Irish goddess Boann, or the white cow, is also very similar to Hathor, the white cow, the goddess of Egypt. Boann is linked to the Celtic Brigid, the mother goddess associated with dairy cows. And Brigid was known to the Britons as the Brigantia, and she is known today as Saint Bridget. Even in countries like China, where most of the people are lactose intolerant, they revered the cow simply because in ancient times these white Indo-European Caucasians gods were building their cities and using the Chinese people as slaves and basically telling these particular slaves to mine gold or do other work for the gods. And the people were always instructed to carefully feed the gods their milk and their honey and their meat, because this was something that was very important to the Indo-European peoples. The Europeans always lived most of the time in northern hemisphere cold climates, and in order to survive, they would use the body parts of the animals that they would kill, like the hide, and make things from leather. It was very important for their survival. They made moccasins and coats and tents from the hides. They would make clothes from the leather. And so they would use every part of the cow. And indeed, it was a very sacred and a venerated thing. It was holy. It was something that was very important to their whole way of life. They would even use the bones and the sinew to make tools. They would use the sinew to wrap a stone around a stick and make a club. They would whittle the bones down and make sharp spears with the bones. They would use the bones as door handles and jewelry. They ate the animal's flesh for food. The dog has been something that has been very important in this particular agricultural way of life that the Indo-Europeans had. And they domesticated the wolf about 30,000 years ago. This fits very well with what we were talking about. Mankind has been here for a lot more than just 6,000 years. This goes back thousands and thousands of years. It's also true, scientifically, that white Caucasians have a higher level of immunity to the dander from dogs. They use the dogs to hunt. That's why to this very day we have hunting dogs. And this is why it's very important for the European, Indo-European Caucasians to have their guns and to go hunting. To this very day, it's something that's bred right into a Caucasian man. If you look on the caves, they always had the pictures of horses. It seems that horses goes back about 30,000 years in Europe, in Western Europe, just like the dog. So this particular way of life where they rode on horses, used the cows for food and clothing, and drank the milk, and used the bee for making some beer and some elixir of life that they used in their breads and other things, seems to be a particular tradition that goes back a long time. So friends, I'm going to go ahead and go. I hope this was interesting, and I hope it explained some things. I'm David Vos. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good day.